Okay, guys. Now I get to. No, wait. Now I get to watch CNN for 15 minutes start. By the way, why American people tends to bully the real estate cathedral Donald Trump, the former president of the United States? By the way, whatever. Anyways, let's watch CNN. Okay, what's going on in the world? Around the world.
The two decisions by far, which have the Biden campaign both angry and excited, and the Trump camp a bit nervous. This week, the court decided to uphold a law triggering a 6-week abortion ban, but it allowed abortion rights to be put on the November ballot. The two rulings possibly changing the dynamics of the presidential race. The two rulings it allowed abortion rights to be put on the November ballot. The two rulings possibly changing the dynamics of the presidential race.
I'm running to make Roe v. Wade the law of the land again.
The Biden campaign putting abortion
To make Roe v. Wade the law of the land again.
The Biden campaign putting abortion front and center, slamming Florida's new 6-week abortion ban as extreme and outrageous.
Donald Trump doesn't trust women. I do.
But hoping that having abortion rights on the ballot in November could make Florida winnable for the first time in 12 years.
We definitely see Florida in play.
Abortion rights has proved a winning issue for Democrats ever since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, with voters supporting abortion access in every ballot measure, including in red states like Kansas and Kentucky. This year, Florida is one of about a dozen states where voters could weigh in on abortion rights, including swing states like Arizona and possibly Nevada.
We'll be making a statement next week on abortion.
Trump, meanwhile,
We'll be making a statement next week on abortion.
trying to walk the line between appeasing his pro-life base, but also Republicans and independents, who believe in a woman's right to choose.
More and more, I'm hearing about 15 weeks. I haven't agreed to any number. I'm going to see.
Here with me today, author and podcast host Kara Swisher, Reihan Salam, president of the Manhattan Institute and contributing writer at The Atlantic, New York Times journalist and podcast host Lulu Garcia Navarro, and Jim Garrity, senior political correspondent at National Review and contributing writer at The Washington Post. Welcome, everyone, especially Jim, who's a first-timer.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm ready to go.
Long-time viewer, first-time
Yes,
caller.
yeah, let's get this thing going. I'm ready.
All right. You got to take it down.
Take it
down.
down.
All right. Now, look, Florida used to be a swing state, most famously in the 2000 election between Bush and Gore, but it's turned increasingly red. Trump beat Biden there 4 years ago by 371,000 votes. Lulu, as a Florida native, does abortion on the ballot in November give Biden a chance in your home state?
It does not. I think Florida has turned into a red state. Demographic shifts have been huge there. Where I do think it will help Democrats is down ballot. We do see that this issue is actually going to have some legs there. There are a lot of House races. There's a Senate race. This issue is actually going to have some legs there. There are a lot of House races. There's a Senate race that's close. And so I do think that's going to be
But Florida's too red.
races. There's a Senate race that's close. And so I do think that's going to be
But Florida's too red.
it's too red now for Biden to have, I think, in my personal opinion, it's too red now.
But as we said, abortion is going to be on the ballot on states all across the country, definitely Arizona, possibly the swing state of Nevada. Jim, could abortion swing this election?
On those other states, I was going to say conceivably, maybe that's the wrong word to just for the abortion discussion. Biden would just need everything to break his way for a state like Florida. And when they put together their first list of competitive states, they went with the blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then they went Arizona, Georgia, all the ones you'd kind of expect. They put North Carolina on their list, which struck me as kind of a stretch. My attitude is anything Biden didn't. They put North Carolina on their list, which struck me as kind of a stretch. They went Arizona, Georgia, all the ones you'd kind of expect. They put North Carolina on their list, which struck me is kind of a stretch. My attitude is anything Biden didn't win 4 years ago, it's going to be a tough, pull for him this time. Florida really feels like it's a little bit out of reach.
But abortion.
Yeah. Oh, wait, look, it'll be a factor coast to coast. Exactly what the Democrats wanted for their motivation. Oh, wait, look, it'll be a factor coast to coast. Really feels like it's a little bit out of reach.
Abortion.
Yeah. Oh, wait, look, it'll be a factor coast to coast. Exactly what the Democrats wanted for their motivation. But on the other hand, I think most people vote on the economy. Probably immigration is going to be a big deal.
Women
It'll be
vote
in the
on
mix,
abortion.
but it's not.
Women vote on abortion. Women are very reliable Democratic voters. And beyond all that, where we've seen actually abortion make a really big difference is in swing states, in those close states where actually getting people out to the polls to vote on that issue will be decisive.
Yeah, you've
Karen,
seen it.
how big a role do you think abortion plays?
A big role. I think it's been there quietly all over the place. And in all these elections, it's mattered. It seems to have mattered, whether it's in Alabama, whether it's in Ohio, in Kansas, all kinds of places. It pops up. I think it'll pop up in Florida in big time.
Well, interestingly enough, in Florida, the supporters of the abortion on the rights are saying we don't want this to be a political issue because we don't want, people who may be for Trump but want abortion rights not to vote for this. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays. Trump, incidentally, says he's going to make a statement about abortion this week to clear up where he stands. But as soon as the Florida Supreme Court put abortion on the ballot, the Biden campaign started running an ad in that state to make it clear where Donald Trump stands.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it. And I'm proud to have done it.
Ryan, can Trump find some way to thread the needle in this statement he's supposedly going to make next week, where on the one hand, he doesn't antagonize his pro-life base, but on the other hand, he somehow fuzzes up the issue for people who are pro-choice?
Yes, I think he can, and I think that he's somewhat unique in his ability to do that. He has such strong support from evangelical conservative voters who see him as their champion that he is able to be a little bit tactical about the issue. He's able to actually moderate his position in ways that other Republicans find it very difficult to do. There's another element of this, Chris, and it relates to what you were talking about a moment ago with Kara. There's a funny way in which these referendums actually decouple the issue from partisanship. Back in 2020, Florida voters voted by 20 percentage points to hike that state's minimum wage, and Trump still won. If you look at Ohio, Kansas, Kentucky, state after state, you've seen pro-choicers win referendums by big margins, but those states continue to vote for Republicans.
but if-
so that
if-
actually could be something that works
If
out
there
pretty
is a
well.
sweet spot, and you say you think that Trump is uniquely qualified, what's the sweet spot?
I think what he's talking about now is using 15 weeks as the pro-life position. He's redefining it around that as what he considers more defensible ground. There are going to be plenty of voters who are still opposed to that, who still consider that too restrictive, but he sees that as defensible, and I think he's going to be proven right.
He's also comfortable in that spot. That's what he actually thinks, which is unusual for him because he swings all over the place. But I think he probably will push for that. I still think it's going to be a problem with his evangelical base. They'll be very disappointed because they keep pressing on. But he definitely has to say something because he's kind of in a jam here.
I don't think he can bamboozle voters.
Definitely has to say something because he's kind of in a jam here. He's pressing on, but he definitely has to say something because he's kind of in a jam here.
I don't think he can bamboozle voters. I mean, I think the very idea that somehow Trump can pretend that he wasn't the person who was seminal in overturning Roe, and that Republicans somehow aren't actually pushing for these very extreme against abortion rights and freedom of reproductive choice.
I don't think there's any bamboozling here.
I just feel like you're saying that he's going to play the middle
There's
somehow.
a separate debate about whether or not this should be handled by voters and democratically elected legislatures versus the Supreme Court. And I think that's what we're seeing play out. And by the way, it's been pretty tough politics.
Here's the thing I don't understand, and Jim, let me bring you into this. I would think of 15 weeks, obviously, there are a lot of pro-choice women who are going to say, I don't want any restriction. I could see that being more acceptable to them. How does that square with the pro-life people who have been talking for decades about life begins at the moment of conception?
No exceptions, no rape, incest.
So how suddenly is 15 weeks okay?
So we asked earlier about whether Trump can find that sweet spot.
Right.
Is it, could it happen? Yes. Would I bet on Trump doing that? No, because he's generally all over the place when he talks about these kinds of topics. He'll say one thing, one sentence, and then in a separate interview, he'll be completely contradictory. Trump can make himself sound like whatever he wants. Sometimes, never mind paragraph to paragraph, sentence to sentence. And yet you think, voters will recognize this. Largely, voters haven't. Trump has been, missing the sweet spot on all kinds of issues all throughout his whole career, saying things that are incendiary, saying things that are crazy and controversial, and it never really catches up with him, at least not to a point where he's no longer, a person who could win the presidency.
What makes Trump so compelling?
But Lloyd, I just want you to briefly, because we're running out of time in this segment, answer this question. How does the pro-life movement wrap its head around 15 weeks? They say, well, yeah, but Trump is our guy, and we know he doesn't mean it.
I'm sorry to say that there are a lot of pro-lifers who are really panicked right now and who are trying to find some defensible ground. Sorry to say that there are a lot of pro-lifers who are really panicked right now and who are trying to find some defensible ground as well. There have been political defeat after political defeat, and they think half a loaf is better than none.
Well, I wonder why American people why many American people oppose the idea of devotion, because I think it is one of the human rights, one of the fundamental human rights. And what do people in states where abortion is prohibited what do people in states where abortion is prohibited do if the children are diagnosed impaired? I think they're outrageous. The idea of opposing abortion is outrageous. Abortion in any circumstances, under any circumstances, and in any situations is absurd. Yeah. And the idea is grounded. The idea is grounded. Grounded. Drowned. And in my opinion, in my opinion, the hatred toward abortion is grounded on Christianity, which looms large in the world. As okay. I'm gonna watch another video, another CNN video. Anyways.
All the legal drama, there is more, surround Donald Trump. Looking specifically now at the election interference case in Georgia, where sources tell CNN some of the defense lawyers in that case are considering asking the court for a gag order against Fulton County DA Fani Willis. Willis has spoken at length about the case to the media and in other public appearances, and has been scolded by the judge in the case for making racially charged comments about it. CNN's Sarah Murray is tracking this for us and joins us now with more. So there are these specific comments. Which comments in particular are defense attorneys saying are really grounds here for a gag order in their view?
I think there's this overall sense of concern about how much she has been talking about the case publicly. You know, it's an interesting position because Fani Willis is up for re-election this year at the same time that she is prosecuting this Trump case. So she needs to be out in the community, you know, sort of making herself visible, making her presence known. But defendants have been really uncomfortable with the kinds of things that she is saying, particularly bringing up race related to the case. One of the things that she said back in January, giving a speech to a church, actually came up in this effort to disqualify Fani Willis from the case. And when Judge Scott McAfee, who's presiding over this case, was considering whether to disqualify Willis because of her comments, because of her romantic relationship with another prosecutor, he decided not to disqualify her, but he all but invited defendants to essentially ask for a gag order. He said some of the comments Willis has made publicly are legally improper, and basically said that the comments she made could be damaging to the reputation of defendants and could suggest, you know, that they are doing something ahead of their trial other than just trying to, you know, prepare themselves, file pretrial motions, sort of present the defense that they're allowed to present. So that's why we're seeing these defendants consider, you know, look, should we go to this judge? Should we ask for a gag order? The trick is there are a lot of defendants who still want to see Fani Willis removed from the case. So they don't necessarily want to ask for a gag order while they're still trying to have her removed, while they wait to see if an appeals court will take this up. And, you know, there are plenty of defendants who talk publicly about Fani Willis. Donald Trump is one of them. Rudy Giuliani is one of them. And so they don't want to be in a position where they move forward and ask for a gag order and it boomerangs back around and the judge says, okay, nobody can talk about the case.
Yeah, some ways be careful what you wish for, right? What about the DA herself and these claims, right, which have been made for some time, that she does talk too much about the case?
Yeah, I think the district attorney's office feels like she's allowed to talk about certain things related to the case. She's allowed to say we're moving forward. She's allowed to sort of explain to the public where they are in such an important monumental case, especially because she's running for re-election and she needs to sort of tell her voters what she's doing for them. And this obviously isn't the only case on her docket. There's plenty of other things she can campaign on. But I think the district attorney's office feels like they are well within their rights to make some comments. She's not going out there and prejudging the guilt of the defendants.
Sarah Murray, good to see you. Thank you.
There's a new angle in the multiple trials of former President Trump. Could there be a gag order coming, not for defendant Trump, but for prosecutor Fani Willis? She's the Fulton County DA accusing him of 2020 election subversion and racketeering. And sources say lawyers for several of Trump's co-defendants in the investigation are mulling over whether to seek a gag order against the DA accusing Could there be a gag order coming, not for defendant Trump, but for prosecutor Fani Willis? She's the Fulton County DA accusing him of 2020 2020 election subversion and racketeering. And sources say Lloyd DA accusing him of 2020 election subversion and racketeering. And sources say lawyers for several of Trump's co-defendants in the investigation are mulling over whether to seek a gag order against all of Trump's co-defendants in the investigation are mulling over whether to seek a gag order against Willis, who has continued to speak. Are mulling over whether to seek a gag order against Willis, who has continued to speak publicly about the case. We have CNN legal analyst and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Elliot Williams here to talk about this. We'll talk a little bit in a second about some of the comments that she's made here recently. But first, I just wonder if you think this would be a smart move for Trump and other defendants to pursue, or is this something that could actually kind of backfire, maybe swing right back at them?
Right back at them. Turnabout is fair play. And there's a couple reasons why it's
swing right back at them.
Right back at them. Turnabout is fair play. And there's a couple reasons why it's probably not a great idea for Trump and his team. Number one, they are trying to get her removed from the case on account of some of her behavior and statements and so on. If in fact they get a gag order that silences her, that takes away all their, or a big part of their reason for getting her off the case in the first place. That's number one. Number two is, you open the door to a gag order against former President Trump as well, because all the parties here, including the judge who is himself running for office, they're all out speaking about this case. So if they put a gag order in place on her, they ought to put one on Donald Trump as well. And I just think if you're a defense attorney, they're really weighing this, and it's probably not a great idea.
Let's talk about something.
Weighing this, and it's probably not a great idea.
Let's talk about something that McAfee's ruling said at a recent awards event. This is what Fani Willis said. This is what the judge said. Recently, they tell me, or this is what Willis said. I'm so sorry. I'm going to do this whole segment myself without letting you weigh in, apparently. Okay, so recently they tell me they don't like me to talk about race. And this is what she told a crowd. Well, I'm going to talk about it anyway. And I wonder how you think the judge sees that, because most recently in his ruling, he basically said, hey, a gag order isn't what is before the court right now. However, it might be time for one.
She's allowed to talk about race. Now, the question is she calling a party to the proceedings racist? Is she calling something, do her comments in some way touch on the substance of the proceeding? And I think people hear the word race and sort of their ears prick up and think that she's inherently saying something of the proceeding. And I think people hear the word race and sort of their ears prick up and think think that she's inherently saying something problematic. The rule is, and when we're talking about gag orders and things that are permissible, is the judge saying something that will impede a party's administration ability to get the fair administration of justice? And when you start talking about race, that's a little bit of a gray area. Now, look, I'll be the first to say that everyone in this case, including that prosecutor, is guilty of probably going too far and saying things they shouldn't have about the other parties and about the judge and the court and so on. But I just think all this sensitivity around talking about race, I think, is a little bit much here.
The judge has also spoken
Yes.
publicly. Let's remind people, he's spoken publicly multiple times. And I know a lot of legal observers look and say, I really wonder if he would have done that if he weren't facing an election, because she is as well.
I think that's the dark side. This is my personal view.
Tell us the
frankly,
dark side.
As a citizen, the dark side of judges being elected in races. They are running for office just like district attorneys and, frankly, presidents are. They're accountable to voters too, in a way that appointed judges are not. And he is going to be out on the campaign trail talking and speaking, and he has an judges are not. And he is going to be out on the campaign trail talking and speaking, and he has an interest in being seen a certain way by the public in this trial as well.
So far, he's been seen as pretty good.
He has,
but I think
yeah.
speaking publicly has sort of raised some eyebrows. All of this talking that is going on, what does it do to the politicization of the trial and to the legitimacy with which people are going to view the outcome?
The great challenge, Brianna, is that one, we in America enjoy the right to speak. Candidates enjoy the right to speak. It comes, many people think, from God as written into our Constitution. And that's frankly a good thing. We also have an open court system, and those two things come in conflict, and they really are here. Judges and law professors have struggled with these issues quite a bit. They need to be allowed to speak and speak their minds about other candidates and, frankly, about the system, but not at the cost of messing up somebody's trial, even a former president that many people take some issue with. So, if I had the answer today, I'd be a much richer man. I don't think anybody does, but it's a very, very narrow one. If I had the answer today, I'd be a much richer man. I don't think anybody does, but it's so. If I had the answer today, I'd be a much richer man. I don't think anybody does, but it's a very, very, if I had the answer today, I'd be a much richer man. I don't think anybody does, but it's a very, very narrow line that both Judge McAfee and, frankly, higher courts that review this are going to have to sort out.
We'll have to see what happens with this potential gag order or not. Elliot, always great to have you. Thank you.
So Sarah Murray is reporting the Trump allies are pushing for a gag order against Fani Willis in the Georgia case. Now, that's quite choice, right? Given the gag order situation out there, he's got multiple gag orders that he's been dealing with, and he slams them all the time, sort of upping the ante on the whole concept of gag order. I mean, just listen to these.
A judge put on a gag order. I'll be the only politician in history that runs with a gag order where I'm not allowed to criticize people. Can you imagine this? Do you believe this?
You saw yesterday where they take away my right to
criticize people. Only politician. A judge put on a gag order. I'll be the only politician in history that runs with a gag order where I'm not allowed to criticize people. Can you imagine this? Do you believe this?
You saw yesterday where they take away my right to speak.
A judge gave a gag order today. Did you hear that? On speech, which I believe is totally unconstitutional.
And then he keeps upping the ante in terms of the things that he says. I guess the question on the list is he going to push these orders to the limit, try to force one of these judges to go ahead? See if you're too scared to put me in jail.
This is rank hypocrisy.
Go ahead. See if you're too scared to put me in jail. Force one of these judges. Things that he said.
Unconstitutional.
And then he keeps upping the ante in terms of the things that he says. I guess the question on the list is he going to push these orders to the limit, try to force one of these judges to go ahead? See if you're too scared to put me in jail.
This is rank hypocrisy on full display. But what Donald Trump has proved a master of in these numerous trials is that he is going to use the legal system and take it as far as he can. And he's got the resources to do it. The average citizen wouldn't be able to delay the way that he has, but because he has the resources, he can do it. He's pushed the limit on what he's saying. And listen, Fani Willis has hardly covered herself in glory in this, but I would have a hard time arguing that anything she has said is anything near the attacks that she's faced by him and his supporters.
What I came up with during watching the video is what the gag order does. Gag order. Gag means a gag means something to stop, something that force people to stop talking, like that keeps people from talking, right? And what if Trump gets gag order? What happens? I'm not sure, because I have no knowledge in American legal system, U.S. legal system. But I wonder why Trump is messing up all the time. I think Trump is kind of guy. I think Trump is the quintessential mess up kind of guy. Quintessential mess everything up kind of guy. And I think that made him the president of the United States. But he's very good at talking. Yeah, his talking skills is in another level from other politicians. Well, the presidential election, a presidential election is held a presidential election is being conducted, will be conducted this year. So which do you think will win the election? I think Joe Biden will win, and the civil war will happen. And the civil war, and eventually civil war will break out in the United States. Because the ruling classes are the ruling classes wrote the scenario like that. Okay, see again. By the way, okay, see again. You know what? I get to get assets first. You know what? Proficiency. Proficiency. You know what? Proficiency in English is the biggest asset in my skill set. In my assets, bruh. So I keep going, bruh. Skill set. Okay, see again. You know what? I want you to stay unfazed, and I'm going to stay unfazed because the Matrix will attack you, bruv. Stay unfazed. Hidenai Kido.